right now, an algorithm is probably deciding what you're going to buy next.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Right. And a massive corporation like one with a revenue larger than the GDP of Europe is going to ship it straight to your door.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. And the brilliant minds running both of those systems, well, they actually share this kind of dark secret. They have absolutely no idea what a business fundamentally is.
I mean, that sounds like a huge exaggeration, right?
Totally.
But when you actually look at the underlying structural philosophy of modern commerce, you realize we are operating this massive civilizational machinery without a blueprint.
Yeah. We just assume that because business is everywhere, that you probably work for one, you definitely buy from them.
Exactly.
But the people studying it must have a unified theory of what it actually is.
But they don't. In fact, the harder you look at it, the more that definition just splinters into these totally incompatible fragments.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today we are doing a deep dive into a truly mind-bending 2026 undergraduate thesis from IPB University.
Yeah, written by Hizkia Pandya Bhagaswara Ardya.
Right, and it's titled Reconstructing the Meaning of Business Through Integrated Literature Review. And our mission today is to really figure out why our philosophical understanding of business is lagging so dangerously behind reality.
And, exploring what the thesis calls semantic volatility.
Yeah.
Which is basically how this failure to define what a business actually is impacts everything from the global economy to, like, the generative AI sitting in your phone right now.
Right. But before we diagnose why the academic models are failing, we really have to establish the terrifying scale of what we're failing to understand, right?
Absolutely. Because we aren't talking about, like, a local bakery or a mid-sized regional supplier here.
Yeah.
We have to look at the absolute apex predators of the global market.
Let's just look at the sheer numbers.
Yeah.
In 2023, the top 500 multinational enterprises generated over $21 trillion in revenue.
That's, 21 trillion.
Yeah, trillion with a T. When you compare that to sovereign wealth, that single figure eclipses the combined gross domestic product of the entire European Union.
Wow.
And global merchandise exports hit 23.8 trillion that same year.
Yeah.
But the detail that completely reframes how you view global power is the concentration.
Right. The geographic concentration.
Exactly. Roughly 74% of the world's largest corporations are concentrated in just 10 countries. The geopolitical asymmetry we are dealing with here is just staggering.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, business is no longer merely an economic mechanism for trading goods, Yeah. It operates as a global civilizational force. Transnational corporations now administer these insanely complex value chains that account for 80% of global trade.
80%.
Yeah, 80. They dictate the extraction of raw materials in one hemisphere, coordinate manufacturing in another, and then drive consumption in a third.
Basically weaving together this shadow infrastructure.
Exactly. An infrastructure that routinely bypasses national borders. These supply chains honestly rival sovereign nation-states in their logistical complexity and sheer power.
Oh, wait, I have to push back on the terminology we're using here, or at least reframe it to ask a critical question.
Sure, go for it.
If these entities wield larger economies than entire continents, and if they, completely control the digital platforms where we socialize, consume information, and even earn our livelihoods, aren't they effectively operating as private governments?
That is the big question.
Right, because they rule over the minutiae of our daily lives.
Yeah.
They dictate speech policies on social media or surveillance policies in our workplaces.
Yeah, but they entirely escape the democratic accountability we would fiercely demand from an actual public government.
Exactly. You can't just cast a ballot to vote out a CEO whose new algorithm just completely ruined your small business.
And that paradox is exactly what makes the thesis so compelling. We are dealing with private institutions wielding civilizational authority, yet we lack any unified theory regarding their ultimate purpose.
Or their obligations, or their limits.
Right. Which brings us to the core problem the author identifies, which is disciplinary chaos. You would expect the academic world to have spent, the last century forging a rock-solid definition to govern these titans.
You really would.
But instead, the academic landscape is completely fractured.
Yeah, the thesis points out that if you walk through a university campus and ask different departments what a business is, you get entirely contradictory answers.
Completely different paradigms.
Let's start with economics. To a neoclassical economist, A business is essentially just a mathematical equation designed to maximize shareholder wealth.
Right. They view the firm as a black box.
Exactly, a black box. A rational, self-interested agent whose sole defining characteristic is utility and profit maximization. And this traces back to Jensen and Meckling's 1976 agency theory.
And Milton Friedman's famous doctrine, of course.
Right, that the only social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. The internal human element doesn't matter to them at all, only the output does.
But notice the mechanism there. Economics relies on humans behaving as perfectly rational, profit-maximizing algorithms.
Which we definitely aren't.
Right. So the moment you walk across the campus to the management department, they completely throw out the economist's black box.
Because they actually have to run the company.
Exactly. Management scholars look inside the box. To them, humans aren't rational algorithms. So management defines a business by its internal hierarchies, its operational efficiency, its culture.
And competitive advantage.
Yeah. The entire discipline is built around the exercise of authority and managing friction, which the economists just magically assume away.
And then you visit the entrepreneurship scholars, and their framework is completely different again. They define business purely through the lens of value creation and opportunity recognition.
Which sounds great on paper.
It does. But the thesis highlights a massive problem here. That definition is so broad and so loose that the field is rapidly losing its conceptual core.
Splintering into a million subfields.
Right? Like tech entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, environmental entrepreneurship. It's everywhere and nowhere.
And we haven't even touched sociology yet, which upends literally all the previous definitions.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
Right. Sociologists don't see a profit-maximizing machine. They don't see an efficiency hierarchy either. They look at a business and see a social actor desperately seeking legitimacy.
Yes, and the thesis leans heavily on scholars like DiMaggio and Powell, right, from their 1983 work on institutional isomorphism.
Let's pause on that, because institutional isomorphism is such a fascinating mechanism. How does that actually play out in a real boardroom?
Well, isomorphism basically means that organizations within the same field tend to start copying each other.
Not because it makes them more profitable?
No, not for efficiency or profit, but because conforming to societal expectations grants them legitimacy.
Ah, I see.
Think about corporate sustainability reports. A company might adopt a specific, highly visible environmental initiative just because all their competitors are doing it.
And they need to signal to the market that they are a legitimate, modern enterprise.
Exactly. To the regulators, to society, their primary drive in that moment isn't optimizing a supply chain, it's just social survival through conformity.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the sheer absurdity of this disciplinary fragmentation.
Okay, picture this. Imagine you are lying on an operating table for a complex surgery.
Okay, slightly terrifying, but go on.
Right. But the cardiologist, the neurologist, and the orthopedist standing over you have completely different, totally incompatible definitions of what a human body actually is.
Oh, wow.
The economist wants to optimize the blood flow, the management scholar wants to restructure the nervous system, and the sociologist is just trying to make sure the body looks socially acceptable to the other doctors.
That is such a great analogy.
They fundamentally disagree on the nature of the organism they are actually trying to save.
And to take your medical analogy even further, they aren't just disagreeing on the anatomy, they are actively interfering with each other's procedures because their foundational assumptions clash.
Right. And this conceptual instability is incredibly dangerous in the real world. If society has no unified theory of what a business actually is, we have no unified mechanism to hold it accountable.
You can't decide what a corporation ought to value if we can't even agree on what it is.
Exactly. And this philosophical gridlock, it was already causing problems in the 20th century when the corporate world was relatively slow and stable.
Compared to today, yeah.
But today, the sheer velocity of technological change is just shattering these old theoretical models. Reality is outrunning philosophy.
Creating what the thesis diagnoses as a massive theoretical lag.
Yes. And the speed of that lag is absolutely terrifying when you look at artificial intelligence.
The numbers are wild. AI is projected to add $19.9 trillion to the global economy by 2030.
That's about 3.5% of global GDP.
Yeah. And generative AI alone possesses the potential to raise annual global GDP by 7%.
And the market obviously knows this, which is why private investment in generative AI surged 8.5 times higher than 2022 levels in just a 2-year span. It's not just the influx of capital, though. It's the monopolization of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
We are watching the consolidation of platform monopolies that defy any traditional definition of a firm.
Absolutely.
Just 3 private companies, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud control roughly 68% of the global cloud computing market.
68%. Just 3 companies.
The digital foundation that every other modern business relies on is effectively owned by a 3-headed oligopoly.
Which completely reshapes the fundamental theory of the firm. I mean, if a new tech startup relies entirely on AWS for its server infrastructure, its data processing, and its AI tools.
Is it truly an independent business?
Right. Or is it structurally just a vassal state operated on Amazon's digital soil? Our existing theories, whether it's the economic black box or the sociological actor, they just were not built to analyze foundational infrastructural capture at this scale.
I want to throw a wrench into another classic framework to show just how deep this lag goes.
Okay, do it.
Consider the classical labor theory of value. It's the foundational idea across multiple economic disciplines that value is generated by human labor, producing a good or service in exchange for wages.
Right, the bedrock of industrial economics.
But how does that logic survive in the modern creator economy? Look at platforms like YouTube or TikTok. A creator filming a video isn't a traditional employee. They receive no hourly wage.
And they have no traditional boss.
Exactly. Yet the uncompensated data generated by their content is precisely what trains the algorithm. And that algorithm extracts billions of dollars in surplus value for the platform.
It's wild. The historical categories of worker, boss, and labor are just dissolving right in front of us. This raises an important question, though. How are modern executives supposed to navigate a landscape where the fundamental categories of reality are dissolving?
That is the million-dollar question.
And the answer is that they are flying blind in a philosophical vacuum. The thesis points to the recent corporate whiplash around ESG, environmental, social, and governance mandates as the perfect symptom of this underlying instability.
Oh, the structural rollout of ESG.
Yeah.
Such a brilliant case study of this failure.
And just to be clear to the listener, we are looking at this purely through the lens of business architecture, right? Independent of the heated political debates from the left or right surrounding it.
Yes, exactly. We are not endorsing any political side here, just conveying the structural argument from the source material. And structurally, the fragility of ESG is just obvious.
Let's look at the mechanism of that fragility. In 2019, major corporate roundtables were loudly committing to stakeholder capitalism.
Oh, I remember that.
The public declaration was that a business must serve society, the environment, and its employees, not just its shareholders.
Right.
But a few years later, when market pressures squeezed margins and external pushback intensified, many of those same institutions quietly dismantled those initiatives.
Just completely backtrack.
Exactly. And this flip-flopping wasn't merely a PR strategy shifting. It happened because there was no stable philosophical foundation beneath the commitments.
It was institutional isomorphism in real time. They adopted ESG to look legitimate when society demanded it.
Yep.
But because it was never integrated into the actual black box of their economic model, they abandoned it the second the social winds changed.
It was just a reporting category, a patch over a broken system, rather than a core ontological belief about what the business exists to do.
Exactly the point.
Yeah.
And if the system is this broken and moving at the speed of artificial intelligence, the logical next step is to look to our educational institutions, right?
You'd think so. We should be relying on business schools to forge new theories and train leaders who can navigate this structural complexity.
Unfortunately, the thesis delivers a devastating critique here. Business schools are structurally perpetuating the problem.
Yeah, the author argues they are completely paralyzed by what he calls instrumental dominance.
Meaning business education today is obsessively focused on teaching the how. Students spend years learning how to optimize a global supply chain, how to maximize a portfolio's return, how to squeeze another percentage point of efficiency out of a workforce.
But the institutions have almost entirely abandoned teaching the why.
The enrollment data from the AACSB, which is the primary accrediting body for business schools, proves this shift empirically.
The numbers are pretty stark.
Yeah. In the 2023-2024 academic year, over 660,000 students were enrolled in master-level business programs. That represents a 30% increase over the last decade.
But look at the specific growth areas. Enrollment in data analytics grew by a staggering 263%.
263%.
Yeah. Quantitative methods and technical optimization are just booming, while rigorous philosophical engagement regarding the purpose of business is systematically marginalized.
Which produces a phenomenon scholars call the separation fallacy.
I love this concept.
It's so crucial. It's the dangerous, deeply ingrained idea taught to business students that business and ethics are inherently separate, often competing imperatives.
Ethics is treated like an annoying external constraint.
Right, like a compliance checklist you just hand over to the legal department,
Ah.
rather than a foundational element of how a business generates long-term value.
It creates a generation of practitioners who view any social obligation as friction against the economic machine?
Rather than the reason the machine was built in the first place.
Exactly.
Imagine teaching a pilot how to fly a supersonic fighter jet. You put them through years of rigorous training to master flawless mathematical precision.
They know how to optimize fuel consumption, hit Mach 2.
Deploy weapons with pinpoint accuracy.
Hmm.
But you never, ever have a conversation with them about what country they are flying for, what the rules of engagement are, or whether they should be dropping bombs in the first place.
You are mass-producing technically brilliant operators who have absolutely no moral compass for the devastating machinery they control.
And if you look at how business schools operate, they are essentially building the flight simulators.
They test and grade the students entirely on the speed and efficiency of the flight, never on the destination. And we have seen the historical fallout of this exact educational failure. Consider the 2008 global financial crisis or systemic corporate frauds like Enron.
Oh, absolutely.
Those disasters were not caused by a lack of technical capability. The architects of the 2008 crash weren't bad at math.
No, they were geniuses.
They were technically brilliant, highly credentialed practitioners who were completely philosophically illiterate.
They knew exactly how to construct synthetic collateralized debt obligations, but they lacked the ontological vocabulary to ask if those instruments were turning the global housing market into a casino that would ultimately destroy the social fabric.
They lacked the capacity to evaluate their own actions outside of a really narrow instrumental logic of short-term profit.
So what does this all mean? How do we even begin to repair a system where the architects of the world's most powerful institutions don't fundamentally understand the nature of the institutions they're running?
Well, the thesis concludes that the only viable solution is to build a dedicated, rigorous philosophy of business.
Not just an optional ethics module tacked onto the end of a finance seminar.
Exactly. A foundational integration of 3 philosophical pillars. First, ontology.
Defining the fundamental nature and reality of a business as a social institution.
Right. Second, epistemology. Interrogating how we validate our knowledge about business and ruthlessly examining the hidden assumptions in our economic models.
And third, axiology. Establishing the actual values and ethical frameworks that should guide business activity.
Those 3 pillars, ontology, epistemology, axiology, they might sound incredibly academic to some people.
They do sound a bit heavy.
But when you apply them, they literally rewrite the rules of reality. Think about the gig worker we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
An ontological approach forces a CEO to ask, what is this worker? Are they a human being contributing to our enterprise or merely a variable cost in a database?
And an epistemological approach forces the company to ask, how do we measure their value?
Do we only trust the algorithm's efficiency metrics? Or do we value their localized human judgment?
Which leads to axiology, forcing the ultimate question. Should we build a system that treats humans as disposable data points in the first place?
It moves the conversation from how do we maximize profit from this interaction to what is the rightful purpose of this enterprise within a thriving society?
Right.
Until we integrate those pillars, we will just continue living in a world governed by corporate systems that don't comprehend their own existence.
And as the technology accelerates, that lack of comprehension becomes truly existential.
Which brings us to a final, slightly chilling thought to leave you with, building on the implications of this thesis.
Yeah, we are rapidly approaching the era of widespread algorithmic management.
Algorithms are already optimizing warehouse workers and directing rideshare drivers.
But this is aggressively moving upward into traditional white-collar corporate offices.
Imagine a scenario in the near future where an AI terminates your employment.
Not because of a specific mistake you made today.
No, but based on a predictive epistemological model suggesting you have, say, a 14% chance of underperforming next year.
It represents a complete abdication of human judgment to an instrumental machine.
Precisely.
And if that happens, who do you even appeal to? If your manager is an algorithm executing a mathematically defined efficiency mandate, and the executives running the company lack the philosophical vocabulary to challenge the algorithm's underlying logic.
Are we building a digital ecosystem where the very concept of human moral accountability simply ceases to exist?
It's a terrifying thought. We interact with these corporate entities every single day. We buy from them, we build our lives around their tools, and we let them shape our reality.
But until we demand that our leaders figure out exactly what a business is, we are effectively letting blind algorithms run the world.
Simply hoping they don't optimize us out of the equation. Thanks for diving deep with us today.